So, without any further ado, as they say, Shaleeza, welcome. Why don't you start off by telling everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for a wonderful introduction and for having me as a guest today on your podcast. I'm really excited to have been given the opportunity to talk a bit more about my journey and Adopt a Grandparent, of course. So, as you very kindly mentioned, I am a director of CHD Living. We're a 40-year established, family-owned and operated group of care services in the southeast of England. I'm also the CEO and founder of the Adopt a Grandparent charity.
Excellent, excellent. How did it all start?
It's a bit of a crazy story, actually, because my mother and father came to the UK as refugees in the late 70s. And having worked for a while, mum was lucky enough to get a university degree. My father wasn't, and became an accountant. They decided they wanted to start a business that gave back to the local community, and care was what they chose. And they found a small site in a small village in Surrey and bought that. It was a training centre and converted it into a 15-bed nursing home. A year later, I was born, and I experienced growing up in the grounds of a nursing home with 15 adopted grandparents of my own. So it was an amazing experience. It taught me a lot of good values, taught me patience, and taught me the importance of valuing and respecting our elders and learning from them. And I had many sort of joyous occasions, both myself and with school friends, going in and entertaining and participating in games. And I grew up like this. It was a very unusual upbringing. I went off to uni. I went off and got a job for a few years, but I knew it was inevitable. I would find my way back into social care because that's where my heart was and how I'd grown up. And it was always a dream to share my childhood experiences with other young adults. And I think where we find ourselves today in a national care crisis, with a shortage of staff and with a generation who are ill-equipped to understand how best to care for their loved ones and their elders, don't understand the challenges that are faced with that, both emotionally and financially. This program was set about not only to relieve isolation and loneliness amongst vulnerable people, but also to support the next generation for what may be to come.
Yeah, I see. And when did you decide? When did the seeds of the idea of getting the charity up and running?
So it started off as a localized initiative in 2019,
Yeah.
specifically for CHD's group of care services. It
Okay.
wasn't a new novel idea. We see young people coming into care all the time.
Yeah.
We've seen examples of experiments on TV, and it was really about inviting young people to come in and spend meaningful time with people living in care. I spoke to one CEO of a group, and he said, there's about, I think 60% of people across his group who don't have family or loved ones visiting them, which is really
That's a
sad,
big number,
right?
isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
huge. And when you think about it, whilst our care staff and our care teams are dedicated to really enriching the lives of those that they care for, they are burdened with so much work, and so much of their time is taken in the delivery of high quality care, and of course upholding the governance and the compliance that comes with that. Those meaningful conversations often don't happen, and so for me it was about finding volunteers to come in and do that. And I put out a call actually on my Facebook page, just seeing people locally who might want to come in. And we were very successful with about 200 young adults signing up at the time. And it was great, and it was all working very well. And then, of course, in 2020, in March, we went into a lockdown. And as I saw care homes, my own included, shut their doors around the country, I was like, this is now more important than ever. How do we sustain this? So we decided, well, let's take this virtual and put out another call on our Facebook page asking for people to virtually adopt a grandparent. And within 3 weeks, I had over 40,000 people volunteer across the world. And today I have over 100,000 volunteers registered waiting to be paired with an older adult who needs some support, which is quite
Wow,
phenomenal.
that is genuinely phenomenal uptake, isn't it? And
Yeah,
just going back to that 60% figure you mentioned, yeah, I mean, it's just it's the one, as you say, to be in a care home. So there'll be people around, there'll be staff, there'll be other residents, but it gives an idea of the people that have friends and family that people have lost, and
yeah,
you know, they remain alone in a sense of their network and friends and family they previously had,
absolutely.
which is, sometimes you can forget that, and when you have that number put to you, it's very
Mm.
stark, isn't it? So, well, that's amazing. So, it obviously really struck a chord, right?
Yeah, it did. And just on that, there was a recent government report that states that 23% of people, older people are 23% more likely to have a premature death as a result of loneliness,
Mm,
which is just devastating,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So it did struck a chord. It struck a chord with a lot of people. What was interesting is it was international and it was people of all ages. So we had
yeah,
people registering their 8-month-old children, or people all the way up, those who are in their 80s themselves,
yeah,
wanting to participate. And when we see the reasons, whenever anyone has signs up, we ask them to explain why they want to participate
right,
and also what their hobbies, interests, and likes are,
yeah,
languages that they speak, and a little bit about them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
more often than not, the reasons people are signing up is because
mm,
they never had grandparents of their own or ever met them.
right,
They've recently lost their own parents or
mm,
grandparents,
mm,
or they're lonely themselves and they want to give something back.
got it.
And it's so meaningful to see that you're actually helping the volunteer as well as the person in care.
Yeah, and so what's the latest on care providers and as getting involved?
It's fantastic. So obviously at the moment, we're really, really driving more operators to sign
Right,
up to the program. We've got about 60 care groups signed
wow,
up.
wow,
And we're a very, very small organization.
yeah,
We've only got one full-time employee.
yeah,
So really the operational side, because we hand pair every individual based on their common interests and their likes. So we're really looking for organizations that are passionate about loneliness and relieving it and supporting our older
mm,
community. The biggest challenge we face is the operational management, because obviously we have to safeguard both sides of the participants.
got it.
So we need the commitment from the care group to work with us, so
Yeah,
that we can make sure we can check in, we can support, we can train. We built a mandatory training program for all volunteers, which sits on the Barclays Digital Wings website, so
mm,
that those participating can get some experience in how to effectively communicate with people living with dementia,
got it.
understanding signs of adult
Mm,
safeguarding, and so on.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I see. And I love the fact that this the idea stems from you doing it yourself within your own homes and your own services. And then saw that, obviously it was had potential to beyond your homes, and you acted on that belief, and you just got this amazing amazing response, and the fact that you've now got 60 groups interested and involved is wonderful. How many right now, how many kind of volunteers have you got going into care homes?
So most of our calls happen virtually.
Okay,
So we developed an app
all right,
in order
excellent.
for the calls to happen safely. The reason for that is it's an international program, although
Got
it's
it.
national to the UK.
Yeah,
And one of the things that we find is we've got some amazing examples of, for example, a gentleman he's living in a care home in West London,
yeah,
and he specifically wanted to speak to somebody who has a Japanese background, speaks Japanese, and plays
okay.
chess. So we found
Of
him his
course.
perfect pairing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we like to go above and beyond. So at the moment, the number of pairings we have are quite they're quite focused. We've got about 25 to 30 happening on a weekly
Yeah.
basis.
Right. Okay.
Many of these have been going on, some have been going on since last year, a lot since the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
And the reason is we're finding we're having to actually rematch a lot of our existing volunteers because of the challenge, the strains that the care homes are under with
Right.
their
Okay.
day-to-day
Yeah.
operations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of the volunteers are doing this as part of their Duke of Edinburgh Award as well.
Okay.
So they're really committed to wanting to finish their volunteering hours, but also build a relationship with the older person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're looking at developing new technology. At the moment, we're doing about 5 pairings a month, and we're looking to develop that so it will support us doing about 20 a month.
And in terms of the ages of the volunteers, what age range? I know you touched on this previously. Are
Yeah.
you finding? Do you have a minimum age someone would be, for example? Tell me about that.
So often, those who are sort of younger volunteers, they're participating with their parents.
Yeah.
So we do have some very, very young children
Yeah.
who have signed up, and they'll come on the calls with their parent.
That's nice.
There isn't a minimum age as such,
Right.
but we
Yeah.
are focusing very much on the kind of early teens to sort of mid to late 20s
Got it.
as a key age group that we want to support through the program.
Yeah.
But that's not to say anybody can sign up, of course, and we look to pair everybody. It's about the correct pairing
Got
at
it.
the end of the
Got
day.
it. Yeah. Great. And something, of course, which we were talking about, and the focus, one of the elements of this particular episode is obviously you're running a successful multi-site operator. How much time right now are you giving to Adopt A Grandparent? How much time to running CHD Living?
So for the last 3 years, building Adopt A Grandparent, establishing it as an independent, socially driven charitable organization, building a board of trustees, and setting up the program has all been done pretty much by myself in my spare time.
Okay.
I tried to kind of, split Adopt A Grandparent and CHD because obviously I want other operators to really be driven to participate in the program. This isn't a CHD driven initiative, it's independent. However, with anything, you find that, it's very difficult to split your time. And so I would say that, my weeks are as and when required. Adopt A Grandparent is my passion. I'm deeply passionate about its success. And so I balance my day accordingly. Of course, my business does have to come first. It's a commercial business. And so we've got a number of acquisition and development projects on the way at the moment.
Okay.
So that does take priority. But I mean, I think when you're passionate about something, you find the time and you find the energy. And people appreciate when you're doing something basically, on a voluntary basis, that they might get emails at absurd hours, and that, that's not to say that, you're not, it's reply when you can kind of thing, and I'll make time for you. And I'm very lucky to have a number of my own team at CHD volunteering their own time to support me with the operations.
Yeah.
As well as just as of 2 months ago, being in a position to hire our first full-time employees. So it's been 3 years of sort of fundraising as well. We rely on sponsorship and grant funding, which has allowed us now to be able to employ someone to be able to support me and grow the charity.
Yeah. And tell me about the fundraising, trying to get grants and everything. Was
Yeah.
that something you were familiar with? Did you have to learn this? Did you get advice on how to do it? How did you go about that?
I've found that grant writing is an art. I have no experience really in charity. Apart from volunteering, I've never really run or worked in a charity. So it's all been learned. It's been talking to a lot of people. It's been reading a lot. It's obviously very highly governed, which is a very good thing.
Mm.
And so, you know, our sector is a very small sector and a very supportive. I think we're a nice collegiate sector.
Mm.
And I've been really grateful to have a number of partners and sponsors who have committed funds and time and knowledge to the program over the last 3 years. And in the last year, we've seen a real sort of interest from a lot of people, which has been fantastic. And we have different sponsorship levels. People can support us in lots of different ways. And we're running a number of sort of creative campaigns over the course of next year to hopefully raise interest and also maybe get some of the care homes participating fundraising as well for the charity.
Excellent. Before we go on, let's just talk about, for any care providers listening, how they can get involved, or potential sponsors. Because if you're like me, you know, you've been very touched by everything that you're telling us. How can, what's the first step for them to you know, try and do a little bit more?
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so visit our website, which is adoptagrandparent.org.uk. There is a form, a contact form that you can fill in on the website, all the information about sponsorship and how you can get involved as a care home. There's a great video on there which really brings everything to life. So I would recommend you watch that. You can also email me directly, shaleeza@adoptagrandparent.org.uk.
Yeah, okay, excellent, great. So what's the another question I had? So just to be clear then, in
Sure.
terms of how you divide your time, it's not so much
Yeah.
like have a Friday I'm going to be working on the charity. It's more like you fit it in with
Yeah.
day-to-day.
You can't. I get about between four and 10 emails a day of new volunteers registering, 2 to 3 care homes a week wanting to
Right,
register. And it is, you know, it's that personal touch. It's making sure that you are responding and you are
got it.
supporting. And of course, then calling the care services on a regular basis to check in, making sure the volunteers are happy, gathering the feedback and reporting on the impact, which is really important. So as much as I wish I could say, right, you know, Monday's my Adopt A Grandparent day, there's just no chance of that happening.
Yeah, no, okay, I understand. And what's the kind of next steps? You know, what's on your mind as a next step for adopted grandparents?
We want to grow. My vision is that we will have a kind of volunteer or paid employee who's an Adopt A Grandparent champion,
Okay.
who is kind of the account manager for every care group or every region, because that would really support the operations. As I mentioned, we're developing some technology that will enable faster pairing. We've already had a prototype done, and this will, our database at the moment, 100,000 people on a Google spreadsheet is not ideal. Computers keep crashing. So
Yeah.
this will use some AI, a bit like a dating app, to search for the 3 top pairings,
Oh yeah.
which will be great. And the long-term vision is I would love to raise enough money to be able to give bursaries to people who are living in the community and vulnerable with an unpaid carer, to give both the unpaid carer a break and the individual a paid for stay in a care service, and access to regular socialization activities and meals.
Yeah.
So
Excellent. Excellent. And also, another question I have for those who might be listening, who, you know, I guess it's two ways, isn't it? You can respond. It's like either you know, take action to support a charity, an initiative, such as Adopt A Grandparent, yeah, which is one way you can get involved. I mean, you know, I know there are other charities, obviously, in the States, but you know, it's just I'm thinking about what people can do and how they can respond, so they can
yeah,
get involved with a charity that's, or a similar initiative that's already in existence, or they may decide, oh, that's, I've got an idea of my own, I can set
yeah,
that up. For those who are going down the, I like the idea of setting something up on my own. Any advice, tips on
yeah,
what they can do
yeah.
about it?
What I will say is sometimes the simplest ideas are the most effective. So don't overcomplicate it and go with your gut. Pilot it, see if there is interest,
Yeah.
and harness the power of social media, because at the end of the day, everyone is on social media and it's free, and you can get a huge reach from that. And I think, if you can do those three things, and if you're passionate about it, people really buy into something that is close to their heart when they can see that the people who are involved in it are doing it for the right reasons. And so, yeah, I think the more innovative initiatives, charities, socially driven programs we can come up with within and outside of the sector to support our aging population, which is only growing, is wonderful.
Excellent.
And of course, if anybody wants to, speak to me directly about how I've done it and a bit more information as well, I'd be happy to share that in more detail.
Yeah. Where can people best contact you?
Again, via my email, Shaleeza
Okay.
at adoptagrandparent.org.uk. I'm on LinkedIn, Shaleeza Hasham. So yeah.
All right. Perfect. Okay. And excellent. Now, is there anything that you would just to make sure that you cover that you've not covered up to now?
No, I think we're good.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for giving
Excellent.
me the sounding board.
Yeah. Well, a fascinating story and account, and I'm sure. Well, I wish you all the best, and
Thank you.
thanks so much for sharing this on the KSCO Success Stories podcast.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
That's brilliant.
Before you go, if you liked this episode, please make sure you subscribe. In that way, you will not miss out on any new episodes as they come in. And also, once again, if you are struggling to get those inquiries into your home, or you do want to make sure that you increase your revenue stream faster by filling those beds faster, then make sure you please go to get my free video on the 7 vital things you must do to fill beds faster. www.springup-pr.com/UK and click on Care Home PR.